Hello everyone, my name is Brianna and welcome to my YouTube channel where we talk about motherhood, being a mom of twin girls, being a wife, being an entrepreneur, being just all the things and trying to figure out who you are through it all. So I wanted to start off by sharing probably one of the hardest seasons in my life this far. As many of you probably know, I was blessed to have two twin girls, Eris and Helani. So I found out that I was pregnant the day after my husband's birthday, so on March the 7th. Honey, I seen that pregnancy test that said pregnant and literally could not believe it. So after going through, that and figuring that out, I ended up going to the doctor about a month later. I remember that following Monday calling the doctor and telling them, hey, I just found out I was pregnant. And they're like, okay, great, but you have to wait until you get to, a certain amount of weeks before coming in, which I thought was kind of weird because in my mind, if I say I'm pregnant, I always thought, okay, well, you schedule an appointment. But neither here or there. I think I was at the end of March when I finally went to my first ultrasound appointment. And so while we were getting our ultrasound done, me and my husband, my husband was in there with me. And I remember seeing on the ultrasound, one little sack, but it was two little eggs in it. And I'm thinking to myself okay, I didn't say anything. My husband didn't say anything, so we're letting the nurse continue on, with the ultrasound. And then I noticed that she gets quiet and she's just looking around. And she was like, y'all are having twins. And my first reaction was I just started laughing. I think I was laughing because I was in such, disbelief, but a part of me was kind of like, all right, let's do it. Let's do it. Honestly, it was harder for me accepting the fact that I was pregnant. So when we came to the twins, it was like, all right, let's go. Here we go. Let's do it. And I just remember looking at my husband and he was in complete shock, disbelief, all the things. I remember him jumping up saying, are you sure? Are you sure? Are you sure? And it was just so funny. I remember saying, Cameron, calm down. It's okay. Relax. It's okay. So we made it through that. Time went on. I had very bad nauseous. It was to the point to where, I could barely brush my teeth. I still did it, but I could barely brush my teeth. I would just literally throw up from that. Most things I ate made me sick. It was pretty difficult. It was a beautiful blessing to be able to carry my girls, but I'm not gonna lie, it was hard, and then still working a full-time job, being a property manager, dealing with that stress, but also, still maintaining. I can say that I was blessed to have a great, regional manager who, helped. And that was days when I really couldn't make it to the office, let me work from home. So I was blessed to have a lot of people in my corner helping me. Even my coworkers at the time, would take care of me, help me, anything I needed. So I was very blessed. And most importantly, my husband was right there, helping me, get me what I wanted to eat, encouraging, rubbing my back, whatever. And my mom, a wonderful mom, who was also there. So I was blessed to have, a great village around me. But when I got to about 7 months, I remember waking up one morning and my head was hurting so bad. And I woke my husband. I was like, Cameron, my head is hurting so bad. And I knew in my heart that this isn't normal. Something wasn't right. And but during, before that in my pregnancy, my blood pressure was good. I went to the doctor every week because I was a high-risk pregnancy. So I seen the doctor all the time. And I knew that it had been, some talks about one of my girls being a little smaller than the other and them wanting to make sure that she was still getting the nutrients that she needed. When you're pregnant with twins, the babies are named baby A, baby B. And so that was the whole thing of them just trying to make sure that baby A, which is now Eris, she was a little smaller because baby B, which is now Helani, was thinking that she was getting more nutrients. And so, like I said, I woke my husband up, like, I think, something's not right. My head is hurting really bad. So we immediately got out the bed, got ready, and went to the emergency room. At the time, the triage was closed because it was like early in the morning. They hadn't opened up yet. So we went to an emergency room right down the road from our home. And I just remember us going there, and the doctor, my blood pressure was extremely high. Like it was, I believe it was like 178 over, I don't remember the bottom number, but for me, that's extremely high. I always had good blood pressure, and especially being pregnant, like that is extremely high. And I remember, the doctor wanting to do an x-ray, and I was like, no, I don't want to do an x-ray because I'm pregnant. I don't want to put that, on my babies. And he was like, well, I mean, you have your phone right by you. He was just very rude and very inconsiderate. And he literally told me, oh yeah, your blood pressure is high, but just go home, relax, and you'll come back down. He had absolutely no care. And we thought that was very weird. And so when we got in the car, my husband was like, hey, call the triage, because at that time they were open, and just see, what they would say about that. So I called them and told them what was going on, and they immediately said, you need to come to the triage now. If your blood pressure is that high, your pregnant twins, come now. And so I remember us going to the triage. My husband dropped me off, and he parked the car. He came back up. I was getting checked in. They, told me to put on the gown. They hooked me up to find the baby heartbeats. And the thing with twins is it's so hard to find because you don't know if it's baby A or baby B. And so it was a little bit of time, but they were able to find 2 steady heartbeats. So we were good on, okay, the heartbeats are good. And I remember they kept taking my blood pressure, and they were like, okay, you've had, you had one high reading. We're going to do 2 more blood pressure tests. If you have 3 that are that high, we're going to have to admit you. And I said, admit me where? And they were like, if you have 3 high readings, you're going to have to admit you to the hospital. So at that time, my husband had called my mom, and she's on her way to the hospital. But I remember thinking in my head, like, it is no way. I cannot be admitted to this hospital. Lo and behold, I had 3 readings that were extremely high, and they had to admit me. And I just remember thinking, what? Like, it was just such a shock because it was a normal day. Literally, I remember it was a normal Friday. I was planning to go to work that day, woke up with a headache, thinking, normally they'll just take a Tylenol, but I knew in my heart something wasn't right. So I'm glad that, we followed that. But it was just such a shock I didn't have anything ready. Like I said, this was September. My girls were due in November. But anyway, so I remember a doctor comes in, and at this time she's like, okay, so we're going to admit you into the hospital, and you're going to have to stay until you, give birth. And once again, I'm thinking, what are you people talking about? How am I just all of a sudden everything's going to be great, and then I just wake up one day and now I'm having to be admitted into the hospital? And she's like, yeah, pretty much your blood pressure is high. We believe that you have preeclampsia, and we don't want to risk anything happening to you or your babies. And we're just going to take care of you, whatever. And at the time, my blood pressure was still running extremely high. And so they were like, we may have to do an emergency C-section on you tonight. And I remember they rushed me into a delivery room. And I remember my mom and my husband being there. And I just remember being in this room, and they're like, these nurses are coming in, and they say, okay, well, we're about to put a catheter in you, and we're about to have to give you, this medicines where you're not going to be able to get up, and it's just all this, and still cannot eat anything, can't drink anything, because we may have to do emergency section. And I just remember being rushed with so many, I mean, it was just one thing after another being thrown in that delivery room. And, you know, all these nurses just boom, 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 boom. It literally felt like somebody was just slamming the world on me, on my shoulders, because I can say that, you know, they were nice, but I think that nurses, when you get in a rhythm, just like anyone else, of doing the same old thing every day, sometimes you forget the sensitivity part of it, you know, and that what I feel like is something that was kind of lacked in that process. Yes, they were trying to make sure that me and my babies were safe, but it's just like slowing down, you know, explaining it, you know, like explaining the part of, you know, you're about to have to get a catheter in you. You're gonna have to, you're gonna be peeing through this thing. You're not gonna be able to get up. It was kind of like, oh, other doctors and other nurses didn't tell you, but you know, so it was just so many things. Having to get a steroid shot in me to kind of help rush the girl's lungs to grow. To, if I had to do an emergency section, the lungs would hopefully be able to survive outside the room. It was just so many different things that happened. It seemed like within a short span of being taken to that delivery room. And I remember, um, you know, just like getting so overwhelmed. And I remember my mom was like, "It's gonna be okay," you know. But that was hard. It's something that people, you don't hear, you know, emergencies like that being talked about. But I remember mom was like, "It's gonna be okay, Brianna." And I remember I said, I remember asking her, so I said, "Is the catheter gonna hurt?" Because it was just, I was like, "Is it gonna hurt?" That was my whole question. But she ended up sticking it up in me, and like I said, I had to get on the medicine to where I couldn't move. I think it was like for 12 hours, or 24 hours, something like that. And so I was literally just in the bed. They put these things on my legs so I wouldn't get any blood clots to keep my, you know, blood flowing. And then so we stayed in there for, I would say, for a few hours. And then they said, "Okay, well, we have a room for you," because at that point my blood pressure and medicine had helped my blood pressure, and God, most importantly, because we was praying, helped my blood pressure to lower. So they're like, "Well, we don't know," you know, it was kind of like in that gray of, we think it's okay, but we don't know. So I remember being transferred to like another room on that floor, which I would end up spending almost 3 weeks in, because I did get transferred, but almost 3 weeks in. And I remember the doctor coming in, and she was like, "Okay, well, welcome, you know, to the unit," and she was pretty much just kind of going over, "So it looks like you have preeclampsia, and you're going to be in here, you know, until you give birth. We're wanting to get you at least to that 32, 34 week mark." And so we did that. And then I remember her coming in, and she was like, it was a hard question. She was like, "Okay, so if something were to happen to you during this, if we have you in an emergency C-section, do you want us to focus more on saving your life or your baby's life?" And I remember hearing that question and thinking, "Oh, why not?" You know. And my husband was like, "Well, we want to make sure my wife is okay." But it's just hard questions like that you don't think about. You know, we think about the glory of pregnancy and how beautiful it is, but I never thought that the end of it would end up being how it was. So we go through that, and when we were, you know, transferred to the other room, when I get in there, first of all, the bed, they transferred me from the labor and delivery room to this new room. The nurses, I guess it was like a new bed, so they were trying to figure out how to, you know, get it to roll or whatever. And they ended up running me into the back of the wall. And my mom was like, okay, Jenny don't play that. So she's like, all right, y'all okay? You know what I mean? But, you know, they kind of laughed it off. But then we went into the room, you know, I got settled in there. And my nurse for the ending of her shift for that time came and introduced herself. And she was trying to find the heartbeat for my girls. And like I said, when it comes to twins, it's very hard to find, like, I'm sure, you know, like the little thing they use, it's very hard to find a heartbeat on twins. And I remember her, you know, coming in trying to find a heartbeat, and I guess she kind of got overwhelmed because it was kind of hard for her to find it. And she was also pregnant. So I think that's what played a role in it. And she was like, oh my gosh. And she says, help, help. Like, she just started screaming for help. And all these nurses just running, and they're like flipping me over and doing all this stuff, trying to get the girls on the monitor. And I remember thinking, oh my gosh, you know what I mean? Like, I remember just so much fear. And I remember it was this nurse. It's like she was from God. It was this nurse, and she was a black nurse. And she said, baby, you're okay. And when she said that to me, it's like I felt a peace that I'm gonna be okay. And I think that she was saying that to me in that one because they were scaring, because they were really scaring me because I didn't know what was happening. But that it's gonna be okay really helped to carry me through those next few weeks. So they ended up finding the heartbeat. Everything was fine. So I ended up staying before having them, staying in the hospital about 3 weeks. And at that time, you know, they just continued to check my blood pressure. They would check on the girl's heartbeat twice a day, in the morning shift and the night shift. And I was pretty much just stuck in the hospital. And that was mentally a very hard time for me because here I am. I'm not going to say like I'm a type A person, but for something as grand as babies coming into the world, it was so much I had to do. So many things we still had to buy. And we also had to cancel the baby shower because I went into the hospital on that Friday. The baby shower was that next day. So we were like, we're just going to cancel that. So it was so much that needed to still be done. And that really bothered me because I didn't want my babies to come into this new world and not have what they need. You know, we had the basket in the crib. You know, like we had like the big things. I believe we did have to buy the car seat while we were in the hospital. So like little things like that, but it really bothered me because I wanted the nursery to be cute. I wanted the clothes to be folded. I wanted, you know, the bottles and all the things to be organized. But that just wasn't my story at the time. And I can say I had a great family that really helped me, that got a lot of stuff for the girls. That was very needed. But I can say for anyone who may be experiencing, you know, that time at the hospital while you're waiting to have your babies, you know, it's very important to keep your mind strong. Because your mind can just, you never know the power of your mind. Keep your mind strong, you know. And the people who are visiting, I would say, you know, always be positive. Talk about good things. You know, we all know what's going on. We all know that it's a hard situation, but don't make everything about the situation. You know what I mean? I think during that time and after, people forgot that I was still just a normal woman. You know, like everyone talked about, how are the babies doing? How are you doing? And it's like, I mean, we're in the hospital. We're doing good, I guess, but within the day we're in the hospital, so obviously it's not perfect. But that's one thing I would recommend to anyone who's out there, you know, just have fun with them. Just talk about good things, you know. But anyway, back to that. So, like I said, ended up staying in the hospital for 3 weeks, and then that was very challenging, very hard, but we made it through. I didn't get to do like the maternity shoot. A lot of like, I feel like the things that you know, with your first pregnancy that you want to do. I was able to get my hair done. So Tierra, shout out to Tierra, she came in and she ended up locking up my hair. So I was able to get that done. So at least I could feel a little cute. Not really, but I felt a little better. You know, when you get your hair laid, it just makes you feel better. So we went through that, and I remember one Thursday after about 3 weeks, and one Thursday, the doctor, they had seen that baby Eris was not getting as much, and she wasn't gaining weight in the womb, and they're like, I think it's time to take them out because we can give them nourishment on the outside, if to help them grow quicker. And so literally they came into our room that Thursday morning and said, we're going to schedule this for today at 6 o'clock. And so, I remember we called my mom, my husband's parents were actually on their way to Indianapolis. So, but we went through it. That was hard also because, I had never had kids. I didn't know what to expect. They came in, I remember they came in about 3 something, and, but I can't think of the medicine name, but they put in the IV that medicine again that I couldn't get up. So I had to get the catheter in me again. And I feel like at that time, being in the hospital will beat you down. And I never knew that. And at that time, I was so tired. And I was like, okay, So we did it. But I remember being a little scared when they were rolling me back. I remember seeing my family. I was like, oh my gosh, like, it's going to be okay. My husband was there with me. And so we went in the back and they, prepped me. And I remember going in the operational room and them showing me how to bend over because I had to, of course, get numbed. So, showing me how to bend, don't move, all this. And laying out on that table, it was so hard. And I remember when they were getting me clean and getting me prepped, laying out, and I remember I started to get so nauseous. And it's because the medicine had made my blood pressure drop too low too quickly. And I remember telling the anesthesiologist, I was like, I feel like I'm about to throw up. And he said, 1 second. I don't know what he did, but he clicked something and I felt perfectly normal again. And then after that, and when everything was stable, I was fine. They let my husband come back and, be beside me. And I remember us just talking. And it's like, and I think it was a time when we both were leaning on God and leaning on each other. And I remember him watching. I was like, Cameron, don't watch. I was like, Cameron, don't watch. He was like, I want to see what's happening. And so he's like telling me little bit pieces of what's going on. But they had like a cover up where I couldn't see. And I didn't feel any pain during the C-section. Thank God. I didn't feel any pain. And I remember, and they had told us prior that, we're going to have the NICU there in case, since they are being born at early, we're going to have the NICU, the team there, in case they need anything. And so the NICU team, everyone, it was actually pretty crowded. I just remember thinking, like, the doctors, nurse down there, were just having a normal conversation. But that was kind of weird. I guess it's like their job, though. They were just talking about whatever they were talking about. And then I remember one was out, which was Eris. She was born first because she was near the bottom. And so they pulled on the curtain a little bit, let us see Eris. I just remember seeing her eyes, and they let us see her. And then, of course, Alani came after, and they hold her up, let us see her. And then they let the NICU put a blanket around them real quick. And so we seen them very quickly and took a quick picture while they were sewing me up. And then after, they said, we're going to have to take them to the NICU. And they were like, Dad, do you want to come or do you want to stay? And I remember telling Cameron before, I said, please stay with me. So he stayed with me, and I think that is when everything truly, truly got hard, because here you are being sewn up. Everyone talks about their first moments with their baby, and for me, I wasn't able to get them off my chest or anything like that. They had to, of course, get the help that they needed, which I'm thankful. I'm thankful to Greenville Memorial Hospital for how they took care of my babies. I really am, because they took great care of them, and I cannot say that enough. But so we went through that, and then after they had sewed me up, they were like, we can drive you through, because I still couldn't walk. We can drive you through and see your babies. And I remember, me on the hospital bed going through and, seeing my babies. And I remember seeing them with all these tubes. And all these tubes in them. And I couldn't touch them. Only thing I could do was just lean over. And so that was very hard. That was very hard. But that was just difficult. So after I seen them for a little bit, they were still working on them. And so I went back. They wheeled me back to my room, and my husband and I went down to the NICU for a little bit. And I remember just sitting in the room, and I remember my nurse that night had been a nurse that I had, so she was so sweet to me. I think that, you think about your first night with your baby, that you'll be able to cuddle them and laugh, and to me, my first night would be hard, like the next 34 days. So, sorry. But, so that was hard, but my nurse, she was very gentle with me. She was very nice to me. We made it. So that next morning, the lactation doctor the nurse comes in and like, oh, so do you want to try? They had asked me that night, did I want to try to breastfeed? And I was so tired. I was just like, I can't do it tonight. So the next morning, the actual lactation nurse comes in, and they're teaching you all these things about trying to pump. And I wasn't able to really pump, honestly, at the hospital. It was a lot mentally, it was a lot. I was able to get wheeled down. My husband and the nurse wheeled me down to the NICU that next day, and I was able to hold Aries for the first time the next day. She still had all the wires and everything hooked up. We weren't able to hold Alani just yet. So we were able to hold her the day after, but we weren't able to hold her the next day. So that was hard. That being in the NICU was extremely hard. Anyone who's out there that knows it's hard, but I'm here to tell you, it's going to be okay. It's going to be okay. Lean on prayer. Lean on those around you, because as you're still physically healing, at the end of the day, I still gave birth, had a C-section. So my body was still healing. And I remember times they'll be like, well, do you want to rest? I said, no, I gotta go see my babies. So I never want Aries and Alani to think that I didn't come. So even in excruciating pain, I made my way to that NICU to see my babies, and I wanted the nurses and doctors to know that they had parents who loved them, were fighting for them, and to take the best care of them. And I remember, just had mostly we had great nurses and doctors, but it was difficult. And then eventually I was able to go home. Like I said, after being in the hospital for almost a month, finally being able to go home a couple days after my C-section, and I remember packing up the room and just thinking, I'm not happy going home because I don't have my babies. So it was very difficult, They're asking, are you ready to go home? And it's like, no, my babies aren't coming home with me. And I remember my husband pulled the car up and seeing, other women who were taking their babies home with them. It really bothered me because I was like, why are they able to take their babies home and I can't? So I remember it was hard. Oh, Jesus, it was hard. But I remember we got home and my husband cleaned the house and he had like a card for me with a cute handwritten note. And I believe we had ended up resting a little bit and going back to the NICU. And that was our journey for the next 34 days. Going up, getting those phone calls in the middle of the night, calling in, checking in when we weren't there. It was difficult. The doctor's saying all this stuff about your baby, and you're just praying that they meet these milestones so they can come home. They're strong. And then while you're sitting there with them, it's hard because you want to love on your baby, but you just keep checking the monitors, and every noise you're looking at, every noise is like, what's wrong with my baby? And I wasn't there to change the first step. I wasn't there to change all these things. So it was hard. But I can say that at the NICU, my girls were at, they kept us involved, so we were able to give them the first bath, the first bottle. But as a mom, it was hard because you feel like, did I fail my babies? Did I do something wrong? Did I eat something I shouldn't have ate? Why babies having to fight? But through it all, God kept me. God is what kept me and my family. And it was hard on all of us that were close to us. We were all praying. We were all just trying to get through it. And I can say that it gets better. And I remember when I was so low one day, because we would always go to the hospital, typically like in the mornings and like early afternoon, and then we would go at night, most days. And I remember it was one night, and then I just didn't want to leave my babies. And my husband was like, let's go. It was like 11. And I had took a shower, and in the shower I would always pray, cry to God to kill my baby so that they can come home. And my husband, he came in and he said, and at the time, my husband, I can say to this, my husband was truly my rock during this time. He would always hold me up. He always gave me the peace to be not okay. And I remember he came in the room and he had some butter pecan ice cream. Because you could tell he just didn't know what to say. There's only so many words you can say. And he said, you want some butter pecan ice cream? And I said, yes. But it was just his offering up. I don't know what else to say. But we're going to be okay, is what I took from that. And so we, Halani ended up having to get a blood transfusion. So, signing off on that, so many things. And then Eris, she typically always, progressed a little more. And so she was able to be moved out of the intensive care side of NICU into like a regular NICU room. And then Halani eventually was able to, and then some other things happened where with Halani's bowel, so she had to be moved back into some NICU. So it was like a lot of ups and downs. And then one time Eris was getting as much oxygen as she needed, so she had to keep put back on oxygen. It was just ups and downs, up and down, ups and downs, ups and downs. And but we made it. And eventually they were able to go home. So Air stayed in the NICU for 32 days and Hawaii for 34. And it's amazing to me to see how strong your kids are. And the doctors are always saying, don't worry, when they get out of here, they're going to be fine, they're going to be strong. And it was also a hard time because Airs were home, like I said, 2 days before. So as a mom, you're like, I'm leaving my other baby here. You know, you want to be happy that one baby's going home, but the other baby's still there. So it's like, you're not really happy because I want both of my babies home. So thankfully, 2 days later, I was able to bring Hawaii home, and we were all home. And I just remember looking at them like, okay, so what do we do now? You know, that was such a hard time. But we made it through the grace of God, through prayer, through having to lean on not my understanding. It was humbling. So, you know, only thing I could do was pray for my babies. That's all I could do, but that's the best thing to do. So for any mom out there that is going through or know a family member going through, let them know, it's gonna be okay. Even if the outcome isn't as good as mine was, all things work together. And it's not easy, but it's gonna be all right. And for your family members, the piece of advice I'm gonna leave to you is, if you have someone going through that, be there for them. Don't ask them every time you talk to them, how are the babies, what are they doing? Just allow them to take their mind off of that, because I promise you, it's overwhelming their mind. They're thinking of all the outcomes that you are. But just give them laughter, give them peace, give them good food, whatever that thing is. Help them to know that it's going to be okay. And I want all the moms to know that if you see my babies, then sit down. You have no idea they were in the NICU. They are the most strongest, sassiest little girls you've ever met in your life, honey. And babies are so strong. I'm telling you, they are so strong. And it's just amazing to see them playing now, and they're 10 months old now. And we don't have no special doctors that we go to. Airs for a little bit, she did have a little physical therapy that she did, but it was just because of the shape of her head. And that only lasted a few weeks. So it all worked out. God is good. They didn't have to go home on any oxygen or anything like that. So this is just a reminder that it's going to be okay, and that it won't always be how it is. And I hope you have a great day.